Welcome to the Open Talent Report, the award-winning podcast where we dive deep into the emerging trends in global employment, the future of work, the talent crisis, the demographic deficit, and the new world of work with our expert host, Connor Heaney. Connor is the managing director at CXE EMEA, a company that takes the hassle out of finding, compliantly engaging and paying contractors anywhere in the world. In this podcast, Connor brings you captivating conversations with top CEOs, visionary founders, and industry experts. Together, they shed light on all things open talent and the evolving nature of work itself. So grab your headphones and join us on this exhilarating journey.
Hello and welcome to this week's show, where I'm delighted to be joined by the one, the only, Derek Sanders, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Opply, a really amazing technology and talent platform that we're going to hear about later in the show. I've had the pleasure, and I really mean pleasure, of becoming a friend of Derek over the years. I've known Derek, I'd say Derek probably coming up to about 10 years now. As we'll find out, Derek, it's about 10 years. And Derek, for those of you who don't know, Derek is a top bloke, as we say in Ireland and Australia. And what that means is he's an exceptionally good guy. And Derek has had a front row seat at some of the most amazing innovations in our sector. He's had a background in EOR, AOR payroll, financial technology, and more recently with Opply in the technology sector. So we're going to hear all about that today. But Derek, a very warm welcome to you, my friend. How the hell are you doing?
Great, Connor. Thank you so much. It's I was waiting when I was going to get the invite for this, so I had to change jobs. We didn't have to be competitors anymore, so really looking forward to our time together, and I always enjoy our time together at conferences and catching up. So thank you so much for having me.
You bet. And Derek, I've often said this, but I'll say it publicly. You are or were my most esteemed competitor. I can't say I miss competing with you, but it's certainly not as interesting. So it's great, better to be partners than competitors, I think.
I feel the same way about you. It's either going to be you or me a lot of times when it came down to global payroll. So I'm glad that we're on the same team here and that we are no longer competing directly, but always excited to see your success and so appreciate you and what you bring to the industry. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Derek. And right back at you. So Derek, just for the benefit of our audience, I give the pop quiz history of Derek. But Derek, how did you become the CRO at Opply? But even before that, what was your journey to get into this sector or adjacent sectors? And how did you end up here? I'd love to hear that, just for the benefit of our audience.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like me kind of fall backwards into this industry. I was coming out of college back in the right when everything started crashing down during the 2007-2008 crash. So that was when I was coming out of school. I was interviewing with Oracle and Pfizer and all these big firms, and they were basically saying you are going to be an inside salesperson, or you're going to have to move to Modesto, California, which there is nothing wrong with Modesto, California. But as a 23-year-old, I didn't want to live in a small town in the central California. So while I was interviewing at a lot of different places, I was like, hey, I need to make some money. So why don't I get a temp job? Because I always knew that was an industry. So I went to a company, Nelson Staffing, if anyone's familiar with them, local Northern California firm that grew into much bigger now. But I walked in there and I was like, hey, I'm looking for a job. They were big I grew up in the wine country. I was looking for just a temporary job, a seasonal job while they interviewed. And they're like, well, we really like your personality. I think you'd be good in this space as well. Would you want to interview? So I do what I normally do, is just overcommit and start interviewing with 15 different companies, and wanted to learn as much as possible about the industry, direct hire, temporary workers, payroll. So I was interviewing a lot of different companies, and I actually stuck with Nelson and joined that in late 2007. So joined the industry doing light industrial staffing in San Francisco, which I don't know if you know much about San Francisco. There's not a ton of that in the city. So it was definitely a difficult first year or so. but after I kind of got my bearings, was there for a few years. And then when my former boss moved over to Ronstadt, I was over at Ronstadt, leading a national practice. So from Chicago West, I ran sales, marketing, HR, and legal recruitment. So I was there for about 6 years. And then in 2016, decided to move over into the enterprise space. So a company called Talent Wave, which has recently been acquired by People 2.0, where I got a chance to work again with Teresa Creech and a lot of other great leaders that we all know and love. So was there for about 4 years. And then in 2019, had a great 4 years at Talent Wave. A friend that actually connected us, which is Trevor Brannon, my former founder of Quill, and I jumped over into the supply chain financing space from a technology perspective. Was there for 2 years. We exited that company, sold it a few years later, and then joined where we got to battle out every single day for 4 years for a People 2.0, where I was the senior vice president over global enterprise. So I supported our teams globally, selling large, complex deals. And then after many years of talking to Opply and our CEO, Lori Hawk, she caught me on a great day, and I wanted a new challenge. So that's kind of my background and how I kind of got to this point where I'm leading the sales efforts over at Opply.
Wow, Derek, I love that history background, how you've taken those chances. One of the things I don't always ask in the show, Derek, but you mentioned some of the great industry leaders. So, Teresa Creech, what a lady, right? Every time I listen or meet her, I'm actually electrified, right? And I must get her on the show, right? Because we've had Doug from Beeline on, and I'll definitely reach out. But anyway, like, how important in your career development, you like, I've got to know you well, Derek, you're driven, you're exceptionally smart, you go the extra mile, you're really likable, but having mentors and leaders like that around, like, how important was that for you in terms of your development, number one? And number two, Derek, did any of them sort of take you under their wing, if you like, and sort of help promote you and elevate you and sort of increase your career, if that makes sense?
One of the things that I think that I always looked up to is the people that are above you, right? The people that you want to get to that point in your career. So at Nelson, it was Tony Bartnetti. At Ronstadt, it was a lot of the industry people including Teresa Creech, Avi Kilnani. And then when I moved over to Talent Wave, that kind of opened up my eyes, going from a staffing role where I led a national practice, but really just on a deal by deal basis and looking what enterprise could be. I felt it really developed my skills and it really matched my skills better to sell a little bit more complex opportunities. And with that, looking at, we kind of had the murderer's row at Talent Wave of senior leadership, right? We, the Kieran Brady's of the world, Teresa Creech's, all the way Jim Hammerhand. So all these people that I could look up to that I learned from, whether it be pricing, Catherine from the legal side, just learning how true professionals work. And so it really has impacted my career. And that's one of the things that I like to do and talk to when people are coming up and really developing in their career is to pay it forward, because so many people did it for me.
Yes.
I think that's the responsibility of all of us in the industry, is to help drive and promote people that ultimately are going to take, I wouldn't say our jobs, but hopefully that will become the new leaders of tomorrow. So I have a great history with a lot of the phenomenal people I've worked with over the years. As always, the youngest person in a sales team. And now that's no longer the case. I am by far not the youngest person on the sales team any longer. But before, I always was like, hey, sport, hey, kid. But a lot of people, they took me under their wing and it really taught me what it means to be professional, what it is to follow up, what it means to sell these complex deals, because you need buy-in from all parts of the organization. And so really what I learned from these great leaders are people that took me under their wing and taught me the right way to do things. And hopefully you, me, everybody else that's kind of leading the teams now can pay that forward to the people that are coming up this time.
Yeah, I love that there.
And also you, Connor, you're a man, the myth, the legend. So, it's that's one of the best parts about this industry, because I get to learn from competitors. I get to learn the greats I spent the better part of a decade in EOR and AOR, so employer of record and agent of record. And the great thing about this space is that you get to kind of work with everybody. You get to work in technology, you get to work with MSPs, you get to work with staffing firms. So you see a full swath of what really makes this industry the industry. And so, whether I pick up word tracks or little slight things that I can incorporate into my sales process and to my teams, I continue to learn every single day. And that's what makes this industry so exciting.
Yeah, I agree, Derek. I think the industry and the sector that we're in and adjacent to, I think we're only beginning. I really do. I think we're at the bottom of the curve. I think there's so many favorable trends in this sector that are going to help grow the hell out of it. But I think having mentors, like you've mentioned, and people that take an interest in you, Derek, is hugely important. And like, it's definitely benefited my career. I had just people that took a risk on me. I don't know why, but they did. And, it was sort of sink or swim. And I managed to swim and not sink, thank God, even though I probably didn't know what I was doing. In fact, I didn't know what I was doing.
We've all said the honest truth. We've all had bad.
Yeah,
we've all had those bad presentations and bad moments, but it's also learning, right? And like you said, I don't think this industry, it was supposed to be dead when Monster and Career Builder came out, and it was supposed to die when, VMSs came out, and they're going to lose the personal touch of recruiting or, relationships. And those things go by the wayside. This industry is so small, so incestuous. People go from one job to another, and it's really about the reputation you have and how you work with people, right? And so I'm super excited I'm very bullish on the industry as a whole, and I think that there's some great things coming out from a technology and thought leadership perspective that I think is going to continue to enhance both enterprise experience as well as hiring manager experience.
Yeah, Derek, I'm fully with you. And I suppose to that point, Derek, I'm familiar with your platform with Opply, but some of our listeners may not. Some, of course, probably are and are. But just, again, for the benefit of our audience, Derek, what is Opply? What does it do? And what are the challenges and problems that you guys and your team are solving for? Because it's a phenomenal platform.
It's one that I'm very excited to join, right? I got a chance to see a lot of great technologies out there, right? I led most of our MSP and VMS relationships at People 2.0 alongside a few other great folks. And so when I joined Opply, I got a chance to see kind of what else was on the market and chose Opply really for a couple different reasons. One is the people, right? Having worked with our head of operations, Rebecca Valadares, and our CEO, Lori Hawk, they're just rock stars, and I will jump at the chance to work with them any chance I get to. But really what our mission is to remove the friction between talent and work, right? At the core, simplest, summarizing what we do is that's our goal, right? And that comes in many different forms. I think one of the things that when I came in to Opply is I wanted to streamline our messaging, because I think that especially with technology, it could be overcomplicated. And at the core of it, what are you looking to solve? And what are you looking to solve for both recruiters, enterprises, organizations, and really job seekers to have the best experience possible. And so with Opply, leveraging AI, it's about automation. And some of those things where ultimately you're not replacing any humans to the point of, this is a force multiplier. What Opply allows you to do is really to identify top talent through ranking and scoring through AI matching. A lot of companies, I think the buzzword of this year, which is, I don't think a buzzword, I think it's going to be where we're driving towards, is skill-based hiring, right? How many times I ran a desk for many years, right? I want to find someone that worked at Google that was a project manager. And if I find that person, I can place them at somewhere else because people want to work with Google. Not necessarily their skills, but just their resume. And so one of the things that we have really pushed on, and what our great CTO, Jason, has done, is build a product where it's actually teaching people how to get to that point, right? What's the hardest part of a diet, or what's the hardest part of anything else, is where to begin, and then how do you execute in that plan? So what I think we've done at Opply is really have a formulated plan to solve a bunch of different issues. One is, what does good look like, right? How many times have you worked on a job and you said, great, I would love to hire Connor. I want 10 Connors. well, how do I replicate Connor? Well, there's only one and only Connor, so that's one. But parsing out the resume, parsing out their skills, and to identify other traits in other people is really at the core of what we do. The second part is really around the taxonomy and skills intelligence of what does a job description look like? How many times have you seen a terrible job description that doesn't really tell you anything and what they're actually looking for? And so some of the work that we're doing, especially with some of the product releases that we've had, is to help guide some of those decisions of like, what am I actually looking for? What does good look like? And then repurpose those skills that ultimately you're looking for in a purpose-built new JD, new assets. How do I identify what people are actually doing with an SOW? We can parse all those things out through skill matching and show them the taxonomy and the skills ultimately that the organization is hiring for. And so really excited about where we're going as a company. We have a couple huge announcements coming out here with some great VMS and MSP partners. So I think you're going to see our name come up a little bit more. I've only been here for a few months, but the team has been working hard and really.
Derek, I think it's only the beginning for Opply and your platform. And having met some of your team, Rebecca amongst them, I think you've got an amazing team, including yourself. And I think the core products and platform that you've got is phenomenal. I've been doing a number of presentations recently, Derek, and for years I've been speaking about this labour market paradox that really originated during the COVID pandemic. You had millions of jobs displaced, right? People displaced, for good reason. COVID, literally it killed people, right? Or it took people long term out of the market. And then you had a large number of reductions in force, particularly in the tech sector over the last 2-year period, right? A lot of the tech companies overhired. But you've got this weird paradox at the moment where there's loads of hiring. Basically, the Western labour markets are full at a full employment rate, right? They're sub 5% or just around 5%, right?
Sub 5.
So, yeah, exactly. Sub 5, right? So I suppose my question is...
Sub 5, yeah.
What can we do to solve elements of this problem? I think platforms like yours can definitely help solve for this around the skills-based approach, Derek. But is there more that we can do as a society and as business leaders to solve for this?
Yeah, one of the things I continue to think about, and especially with it is role reduction, right? But when you're impacted by a reduction in force, as an individual, that's hitting you at home. That's affecting your family, your kids, whatever it might be. And it's not easy to say like, hey, sorry you lost your job, but we're automating, we're moving things forward, and it's going to be better for you down the line. So I don't want to minimize anybody that, has been impacted by those things. But one of the things I continue to think about and what I see, especially working with all these great companies, from an enterprise perspective, and, you and I got a chance to work with, we competed for a lot of them over our time in the EOR space. But I think it's a repurposing of that, right? So some of the skills and roles that people are hiring for are not going to be on the job market anymore. And so the opportunity for upskilling, the opportunity to really, at the core, what do you do well and how does that fit within the organization? My wife, after, we had our third kid a few years ago during COVID, we moved to a new spot. She wants to get back on the marketplace, and it's just like, where do I start? Where do I begin? I think that's what a lot of people feel like, right? It's, you have skills, you have great work history, but what do I do? And I think that some of the things that hopefully we're going to talk about in the future, there's many ways to identify new opportunities from a candidate seeker perspective. But the other thing I continue to think about is from an enterprise perspective, a lot of these companies have cut pretty hard to the bone, and they need to replace, and they need to come back and identify those talent to bring back. And so knowing what you have in the organization, knowing what skills you have, what technologies they have leveraged, those are some of the things that I think that with some technology, with some automation, can help identify people that would be better fits for the roles, and ultimately people will be more fulfilled in the roles that they're doing, right? The flexibility of work, I think that too, I think when COVID hits, we saw this in the clinical space, right? And I don't know if it impacted the same way in the UK, but what happened is a lot of people got rich really, really quick because they can charge whatever they wanted to. And they basically had a great couple of years. And what I've seen on the clinical side is that, what happened is really it's a correction of overhiring, leveraging travel nurse and other temporary workers for high numbers. And they're like, what do we need to do organizationally to mitigate costs, mitigate risk, and to bring some of those things back in house? And so I do think it's evolution. I think we're going to flush out of that here pretty quickly, but those are just some of the examples that I think that we are thinking about that paradox of the labor market having such low unemployment, but layoffs continue to happen.
Yes.
That's for a lot of different reasons, including the bottom line for companies that want to trim the fat before the end of a quarter. But people hopefully are getting more skills and getting more information on the next neck.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent analysis. Like I've got this thing in my head, Derek, at the moment, which is in a talent short market, right? So essentially we're producing less people. There's almost full employment by the reduction in forces that you meet. But it strikes me that if you're an enterprise, small, medium and large, the talent that you do want to hold on to, you want them to stay with you for as long as possible, right? Whether they're an external worker or extended worker or contingent worker or a permanent worker. And my assumption is, and my bet is that there's going to be less permanent workers for some of the cost pressures that you mentioned, right? Because you're taking a fixed
What's the
cost.
cost of hiring an employee? Yeah,
Exactly.
the cost of hiring a full-time employee is what the average is $13,000 for a new hire in the
Yes.
something.
Yes.
I think that's what the number is. Just hire a full-time versus hiring a temporary worker.
Exactly.
And then also on the flip side, on the candidate side, right? You may be able to move up from $50 an hour to $60 an hour by attaining a new job. And those are that's always the balances of the talent supply and talent demand.
Yes.
Right. When I started my career in light industrial, it was a difference of 25 cents or 50 cents that someone would make a move for a new job. But what we're seeing is on the technical roles and the engineering roles and the higher demand roles within technology, those numbers are jumping, right? And we're seeing that when you are a great talent, that you've done well, that you produce good work, you're being recognized, you're trying to be retained, and other people are trying to get you. And I think that people have more access to see what the market's truly bearing, right? Think how much automation happens from a reach out perspective.
Yes.
Recruiters have your information on LinkedIn and other places like that. Job boards are becoming more relevant. New opportunities that you would never even think of come to you.
Yes.
Proactively, right? You are just sitting there and you're like, do you want to make more money? Do you want to interview with us? And I think a lot more people, because they've seen like some companies don't necessarily care about them, or they've had a reduction in hours, reduction in work, or flat out layoffs. I think they're like, I'm going to look out for myself and for my family and find the best role for me.
Yeah. And do you know what I said to that? They're good on them, because I like the way that the power asymmetry has changed, right? So I felt that during the pandemic, the power moved to the workers, right? And then it moved back to the employers or the end users. And now it strikes me that it's back with the workers, particularly workers that are highly skilled, in demand, mobile in terms of they can work when they want, where they want, and for whom they want, and within reason, charge what they want, right? And I think it's great to see, right? But the corollary of that, though, Derek, is, and here's one of the things that I'm concerned about, and I'm wondering if you share my concern, because I know you're in the greatest capitalist country in the world, right? And I'm a capitalist too, right? I believe in the free market. I believe in the free movement of labor. But if you look at the gig and the platform economy, right, on a general basis, most of the gig jobs on a global basis and in USA are in food delivery, trucking, courier, and people transportation. And typically, with the exception of trucking, those jobs are some of the most precarious jobs in the world, right? Not just in the USA, but also in UK, Ireland, Netherlands, the list goes on. Those people, and I don't mean those people in a pejorative sense, but those workers I've described as low choice, no choice, right? They typically don't have the skill set, the capability, the experience to charge what they want, work where they want, go where they want. And my view on those workers is that that they're in a difficult spot and that they should be looked after, not by the government, but by legislation.
Agreed.
You agree with that? Are you with me, Derek? We need to build a movement around this.
Yeah, because I think especially during COVID, right? The essential workers, my wife is a nurse, right? Doctors, police officers, right? The rest of it. But those people are so important and they're integral to our societies, but so are the people that are performing common tasks, right?
Yes.
And I think task is the right way to put it because it's a deliverable. It's like, in our world, an SOW could mean a multi-million-dollar SOW where they're delivering a software to be with, and they deliver something, right? And in the literal sense of what you're describing, which is I am literally going to deliver a food service, a person, what it might be. And some of those things is like, we continue to see like AB5, which was really there to hopefully protect the worker in California. And for those that don't know, AB5 was a legislation that was passed in early 2020s to support those gig workers at Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, etc. But really what it's done is people find new ways to go around the laws and to circumvent some of those things. And I think that those people should definitely be protected, right?
I'm so pleased we're in agreement on that. Like, Derek, one of the things that I find interesting is I remember when I was in the talent platform back in 2013, and I remember writing a bit of a white paper, right? And it was sort of like a manifesto for change in the staffing sector, moving from bricks and mortar, moving from outdated practices, moving from email, CRM, persons banging the phones, right? Old school. Do you want this job? Can you do this? Do that, right? Scheduling the interview, all that stuff that actually still happens. Now, some of that has been digitized or automated, but in the paper at the time, which was 2013, I said that in short, recruitment stroke staffing has not yet had its big bang moment. And I was looking at the stock markets in the 1980s, Derek, and how they had their big bang moment. So the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, massive, huge pit of traders shouting and screaming and giving orders across, right? Within about 5 years, gone, right? Now, in some ways, I'm pro-technology, and others, I'm skeptical about AI, but certain types of AI. But just for a moment, just bear with me. So my thesis or hypothesis was that recruitment and staffing had not yet had its big bang moment, right? And I still think that it hasn't yet had its big bang moment. And I still think the sector on a general basis is ripe for disintermediation and disruption, because even though it's people dealing with people, it strikes me as multiple layers, right? Why do you need a broker to get you a job, right? Why can't the technology do the work of matching you with your skills, with your experience, with your location, with your salary? Let the technology do the work, right? It would take a lot of the friction out to your point. So in my view, you've got sort of the technology element of staffing and recruitment and matching, right? But you still got bricks and mortar recruitment companies where you have people banging the phones, as we called it when I worked in London, to get people jobs. So do you think the two will meet, Derek? Because you're at the opposite end of the spectrum with Opply, but you've come from, like you said, the beginning of the spectrum, like myself, right?
Yep. I think one of the things that, to your point, is I do think it's changing, right? The role of the MSP is changing. I think that's one, right? I think the role of recruiters, which is leveraging tools, but the human element will never go. Like, you be sent a job, and I'm not going to name the name of the company that sent it over to me, but I worked hard in my career, and it'd be like, you'd be great for a sales intern role, which, okay, that's totally fine. If you see my resume, you think I'd be a great sales intern, that's totally fine. But the candidate experience is not great, right? I will never work with that company ever again, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But these are the things where, unless you know your audience, and unless there's someone behind the button that is sending that job to a candidate that is qualified, that's interested, that is now aware of the role, I think that will never change. I think that as much automation is so important, I think, because it's allowing people to focus on the tasks that they're great at, right? And I don't want this to be a commercial for Opply, but really what we're trying to do at Opply is not replace the recruiter, but to enhance them, right?
Yes.
Those are the things where knowing your client better than the technology ever will. No, you will never know, like, a hiring manager likes this, and this, right? And so if you're able to put those things into an AI search and to really identify those key things and then qualify the candidate, that human element touch of reaching out, are you interested in this role?
Yeah.
Let me tell you more about it. Let me tell you what they're, from a soft skills that they're looking for, the compensation. Are you going to the office? Are you not going to the office? AI or technology will never replace that bit of human interaction. Right?
Yes.
So if you think about online platforms that are doing short-term tasks, can you execute a new logo or new web design? I think that's pretty simple. Like, yay, yes, I bid X amount of dollars on it. I do the work. I receive the money. That's great. But for longer-term opportunities, which we still see, and we're seeing that freelancers, independent contractors, W-2 contractors or the equivalent around the world, they're having a little bit more autonomy and they can actually say what they're demanding. And so it's really the role of the recruiter and or the people, the companies that are supporting the recruiters to enable them to be better on giving them the candidates information on the specs of the job, the soft skills, and the culture of the role.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's really fair comment, and I think that's a great way of looking at it. A number of guests in the show, Derek, have expanded on that to talk about almost like the recruiter being more like a concierge service, when you go to like the nice fancy hotels, which, it's, in my case, it's very rarely, but on the occasion, yeah, exactly. Only every 2 weeks, right, Derek? That's the
yeah.
But on the occasion I've been lucky enough to go to, you can't beat that experience of going to talk to the concierge and saying, "Hey, I'm in a new city. Where the hell do I go where, I'm not going to get robbed, killed, I can have a really good experience?" And I think that's probably, in my view, the direction of travel for the recruitment and staffing sector, that the recruiter will become that concierge, but enhanced and augmented by technology such as your company at Opply. Derek, what? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's when you go to those nice fancy hotels and you say, great, it's my wife and I's anniversary. Where should we go? And they're like, you should go to a fast food joint. Are you listening to me? Is that what I'm looking for? And to the point, it's having that personal touch of really having somebody that can sit by you and say, hey, I've learned from you. How many times I can think about these people in my 10 years removed from running a desk. Yeah. I can still think about the candidates, or I see the new post on LinkedIn that they've been promoted to a vice president of PR or whatever it might be. And it's like, I played a small part in that, which is matching the talent with the opportunity. But unless I listened to them and really what they were looking for, their career could have gone a completely different direction. And what I like to see and what I see from my friends, and, I don't know about you, Connor, but I swear to God, my mom will be like, hey, I met this nice person. I told them that you're a recruiter. I'm like, Mom, I haven't done that for 15 years, but I'm happy to help them out, write their resume, introduce them to nice people, whatever it might be. Yeah. But, these are the things where ultimately I think that the personal touch and the having people heard and seen and express what they want in their career, I think that will become so much more important, especially when there's more jobs out there. There is less people qualified to do those jobs. And so that concierge concept is definitely one that I think that will win the day moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting, Derek. My mom, don't think could ever handle that. I left my legal career to become a recruiter, and I still think that she rules the day. And even today, I don't think she fully understands what I do. I'm like, hey, Mom, we've built a reasonably sized,
How about your wife? My wife. my wife can tell you what I do for a living. He does something in like staffing or something. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. But my wife, I think she's overheard enough calls when I was working from the house. She's got a good idea. But interestingly, Derek, my wife is also a nurse, right? But she's been on a career break since she had her two kids, right? So, but interesting, just going back to the tech. So one of the technology points, like at some point she will want to go back into the traditional workforce, right? So I call her the CEO of the house now, which really pisses her off, right? Because she thinks I'm joking, but that's what it is. That she runs the show, right? I do my thing.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Right. But she doesn't like that.
Especially for a couple of road dogs like us, like
Exactly.
The world would not survive without the strong people behind us, right? Or with us, right?
Exactly. Derek, fully, and respect to your wife and mine, because, they have to put up with us not being there as often as I'm sure you or I would like, right?
But I kind of the opposite end. It's been 7 weeks since I traveled, and she's like, "When's your next travel?" Because like, this is too much, Derek, right now. Can you go back on the road? Like, go sell some stuff. Like, we're good, Yeah,
that happens in my home too. But Derek, just thinking about people that have come out of the traditional workforce to run the house or look after their children, right? If you think about how most organizations screen today, right? You've typically got an applicant tracking system, a career site, a website, right? Now, oftentimes, the best workers are screened out even before they get a chance to get bloody selected, right? Before they even get a chance to get interviewed, right? Yeah. So, like, my view on this is that we need a fundamental rethink about how we actually hire for people. Like, do you really need to go to college, right, to do most jobs, right? Unless you're a doctor, engineer, maybe an accountant, a lot of things. Like, no one trained you to be a recruiter. No one trained you to be a CRO, right? University or college, I don't think on a general basis trains you for that. My law degree didn't train me to run a company, right? Far from it. Right? Yeah. So my view on this is that we need to get better actually at designing how people apply and get jobs. Have you any thoughts on that, Derek? How we can improve that process at the very beginning?
And not to talk about my family again, but like, one of the things I think about upskilling is big, right? My wife's going back in the workforce, and we talked yesterday. She's like, do I get my master's in nursing? Do I get a wound care certification? And so I think that one of the things that, when you're talking about how do I apply for a job or am I qualified for a job, I think that college is a lot of things for a lot of people. Mine was to have fun. I didn't do much schoolwork, and I graduated. Good. But, where I've gotten way more real world experience is I sold pest control door to door in Alabama. I, worked at a science spinning company selling contracts for them. I did these things. I worked at nightclubs as a bouncer, like just things that you would never think of that prepared me to hopefully be able to relate to people, to do the things that I think I'm really good at. And I don't think any part of having a 3.0 grade point average at a state university made me who I am today. It's a part of it. It's part of a process, commitment, and all the things that you finish. Yeah. But some of the best professionals, I know that I've seen multiple different C-suite people that when I ask them where they go to college, like, I never went to college. I created this. I built this, platform. I did these things. Yeah. I live and breathe it every single day. That's so much more than somebody goes to a fancy college that, they didn't have to work for anything in their life, where people are grinding, right? What I love in my background is I lived in San Francisco for the better part of my life, and for my professional career. I don't live there anymore, but Silicon Valley is built by a bunch of hustlers. And there's the Stanford grads that you see, and you know that they're, they've worked their way up and they worked at these cool engineering school degrees at Cal and Stanford and those things. Yeah. But a lot of it are people that just fell into a great opportunity, that had the drive, ambition, and skills to upskill themselves, and that were able to build a career for themselves. And no part of that is responsible for the education. And by the way, I'm not saying that education is not important whatsoever. Of course. That was the best. I met my wife in college. Yeah. The best vacation my parents ever paid for. San Diego State. So go Aztecs. But I think that when you're thinking about it, especially 20 years removed from college, that's not reflective of who you are as a person or who you are as a candidate. Yeah. And so I think that for the people that are thinking about, like, where do I instruct my kids? Where do I point them in the right direction? I'm seeing that, I have 3 young boys, and one of them wants to be a scientist. One of them wants to be a singer, which that's not going to happen. He has a terrible voice, but I love him. And, It's not the job of like, hey, I want to be a baseball player. That's what all I wanted to be, or a doctor or a lawyer. It's like, I want to be a gamer. I want to design websites. I want to build something. Yeah. And that's really encouraging for the future, because not to go down a diatribe of education, the education system in America or anywhere else, it's really, I think people are better at identifying. Everybody's done something different. I know what I want to do, and I'm going to work towards that goal. Yeah. Schooling could be a major part of it, or it could be no part of it, right? Design a website. You could build that on yourself. Yeah. Design a platform, right? There's many different ways. And so when I continue to think about, from a practical standpoint, is the best part about automation, the best part about technology, it will enable people to become more specialized in the fields that they want to be in. And new.
Yeah, I agree with all those points, Derek. Actually, I think really well put. But just on that automation piece, Derek, I've had a number of different guests on recently. I had Andrea Wade, who's the Vice President for Artificial Intelligence with iCIMS. Amazing lady. I've known her about the same as we've known each other. I had a really interesting chap who we'll both know, David Swans from IBM, on recently. He's one of their partners now for artificial intelligence and BPO transformation. And for regular listeners of the show, they'll know that I'm obsessed and also skeptical about artificial intelligence, and specifically its potential negative impact on jobs and jobs displacement. I suppose my question is, Derek, do you share that concern that artificial intelligence unchecked has the potential to adversely impact jobs and employment?
I think in any arena, things could be negative, right? I think that in used in the wrong way, to screen out, to discriminate, to be biased, all those different things, I think it definitely has the opportunity to be negative to people looking for jobs. As a proprietary AI company, I lean the opposite way, right? So I respect your stance. But one of the things I continue to think about, and why one of the reasons I came over, is what does AI mean to me, to you, to the job seekers, right? I was actually at an MSP supplier conference in London a few months ago.
Yes.
And they had this woman that was on the British Council, the Government Council for AI. And she asked people to raise their hand, like, what does AI mean to you? And about 10 different people were brave enough to raise their hands. I was not one of them. And they gave 10 really eloquent, smart answers. And she's like, you're right, because it means it to you, right? What does AI mean to you? What does automation mean to you?
Yes.
At the core, simplest essence of AI, it's automating tasks, repeatability, and those things will help drive efficiency gains in the space. And so when I think about the way our technology works, or other leading AI companies that are trying to do it for good reasons, I think that obviously there's always bad actors, but one of the things I continue to think about is, if we're able to offer something different, offer some automation, offer some things that, when you walk as a recruiter, when you walk in the door, you have a short list of candidates. You're not having to parse through and do Boolean search and all those different things, but you're actually able to identify skills, see that they're relevant matches, and then reach out to that person for a human connection to talk to them about what they're looking for in their career, and does this job match up? It's not hurting them in any way. It's actually driving it faster and being more efficient in identifying the opportunities ultimately that they could be qualified for and they may be interested in, because the human choice will never change, right? I have the autonomy to say yes to a job, no to a job, etc. But one of the things I continue to think about is, how do we make it easier for both candidates and people that hire people, hiring managers, recruiters, curators, right? Those are the things that if we're able to match them faster, then that means faster speed to interview, faster speed to offer, faster speed to hire.
Wow. And I love that, Derek, and I love the way your answer is so thoughtful. And I think it's good that your AI and other companies' AIs and companies like yours are helping people, right? And they're helping people get jobs faster and better, right? And that's to be welcome, particularly in this talent short market where we're putting the talent first, I think, is of huge importance. So, Derek, thanks for taking the time to to expound so thoughtfully on that. So, Derek, you've got a rather, what might be considered unique setup, right? You've been one of the most successful guys in our space. You live and work remotely in Hawaii, which is a large island off the Pacific coast of the United States. But yet,
5 hours from anything, by the way.
Right,
Connor.
exactly.
So, a lot of airline miles.
Yeah, a lot of airline.
miles.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? 5 hours from everything. So, yeah, when you go, you got to be gone, right? But you've been able to fashion a very successful career and a very successful life working across multiple time zones. And I marvel at you, right? And my question relates to the following, Derek. How the hell do you do it? But also, what's your take on remote work? Do you think remote work is ultimately a good thing if it can be done remotely? Of course, and not all jobs can.
Yeah. So how do I do it? A lot of effort, maximum effort, as I like to say. Having 3 young boys that, need straight teeth and shoes and baseball gloves and all the rest of it keeps me motivated. And the opportunity really, like when I joined People 2.0 back in 2020 is the height of the pandemic. Everybody's working remotely. I was the first California hire from a leadership perspective. And they're like, mostly East Coast. And when I pitched them moving because of personal reasons out to Hawaii, so my wife can be closer to her family.
Yes.
There was some pause, right? My another mentor and great leader, Pat McCall, was like,
brilliant.
You can do whatever you want to do because you're successful.
Yeah.
But do you want to do that for yourself? And I think one of the best things about remote work is if you're willing to put in the time and you are qualified for your role, I think work can be done anywhere. And that's a great thing. I've been working remote since 2014 probably, where I had 14 different offices and I was bouncing around everywhere. I'm like, I'm not going to go in the office every single day. I can do more things from my home office and then go meet with my teams in all those individual offices, right? I do think that there is an overcorrection for some workers because losing the camaraderie of, I bring this up just to highlight at the height of Quill, my startup where Trevor Brand and I worked together. We went from, I was employee number 17. We ramped up to like 125 and we were all in the office together. We were, we had, the cold brew and the beer and the ping pong table and the video games and all the cool stuff that you have. And I would never trade that in because that was a great 2 years of my life where, being around a startup, feeling the energy, working together, I can go talk to the head of engineering and say, we're building out a Beeline integration. What are we doing about that? How, what do you need from me? And you could do that through Teams and you could do that through video conferencing, but to sit in a room and whiteboard together, I don't think that can ever be replaced.
Yeah.
So like one of the things that I love that we do here at Opply is while we are our remote, our CEOs in Boston and our CTOs in Baltimore and I'm in Hawaii and we're hiring people in Europe and all those things, we still come together at least every quarter to work a couple days together to keep the camaraderie together, right? Now, I do think some jobs should be together in office, right? But who am I to say what roles those are? That's for organizations to decide. Yeah. But I've loved the flexibility of being able to choose my own hours, right? I typically wake up at 2 a.m. I'm hopefully done by 1 p.m.
Wow.
I can still go be dad and go coach baseball and coach basketball and do all the things I want to do. But that also comes with, I need to go to bed when I have a 2-year-old son. Yeah. When he goes to bed, I'd say the babies are going to bed because I need to wake up early. Yeah. He needs his rest. Yeah. So I think that if you're willing to put in the time and you're willing to put in the sacrifice and you have the results, right? The world's kind of your oyster. Yes. And I'm not special in that. Like I think that a lot of people can do those things. You live in Ireland. Some of the great people that we work with live all over around the world. One of my favorite people in the industry, she leads solutions for an MSP. She lives 4 hours away from London and she lives in a cottage in the middle of nowhere. But guess what? You hop on a train, you go into London, it's totally fine, right? Yes. One of the people that I worked with at People 2.0, he worked for me. He worked in Brazil. His wife wanted to move back to Italy. She was Italian. and they moved from Brazil to Italy. And guess what? He still sold into the into South American region, right?
Yeah.
He was willing to put in the sacrifice. So I think it's about opportunity, qualifying results, and if you have the motivation to be fully remote.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's changed the course of my business life and my personal life, Derek. For me personally, I always found being in the large office was enjoyable at the early part of my career. We used to, go out, get pissed out.
Happy hours and
Happy hour, Thursday night, Friday night, Wednesday night with clients,
Friday lunchtime.
Friday lunchtime, exactly. It was great. Yeah. It was bloody brilliant. But I feel as I've got older, maybe more settled or more conservative or not as wild, I prefer the home office. And I think it's, for some people, or including myself, it sounds like you, I could be much more effective and efficient. And also, I don't want to be commuting unless I have to actually travel for a meeting or a set of meetings. I hated that. I hated it.
When I lived in San Francisco, I lived 2 miles away from my office. It would take me an hour to get home. On the way there, I would go early.
Yeah.
On the way back out in San Francisco, 2 miles away, could take you an hour if you drove.
Yeah.
And I probably should have just walked, but I was lazy and I had a company spot and all the rest of it. But, it's the commuting time is huge where I can walk down my flight of stairs and get working and talk to somebody in Romania 1 hour and then end my day in Singapore. Those are the type of things where if you're in an office, could you do that? Yeah, you could, but you're losing an hour or 30 minutes or even 15 minutes.
Yes.
This impacts your day.
I agree.
So, when I look to hire people, when I look to bring, I'm like, I'm not a babysitter. Like, you're selling enterprise level deals.
Yeah.
The results speak for themselves. The social element, I do miss the office piece of it a little bit too, though.
Yeah. There's elements of that were definitely a lot of fun. So, Derek, I feel like a bit like in Scrooge, the ghost of Christmas past, Christmas present, and also looking at the future. So, but I want to finish with a question we ask all of our guests, Derek, and the question is, what is your prediction or predictions for the future of work?
Wow, that's a big topic. I think that, especially over the next few years, depending upon the geopolitical nature, inflation, there's so many different factors now, right? And the industry does impact, right? When a sector gets over-regulated or government gets involved or inflation goes up or Fed numbers go down, right? Everything impacts it. But from a pure future of work perspective, I think that a couple different things are going to happen. One is I see the raise of talent marketplaces. I see that the way that people have been hired in traditional senses, whether it be from a temp agency to full-time work, those will still obviously be there, but it's going to be a shrinking number of those straight line opportunities. I think that people are going to want to have more flexibility in work. I think that from an independent contractor prediction or independent contractor side, I think that number is going to go up. People are going to have the business wherewithal, right? A few years ago, there wasn't, the, independently and bunkers and all those things to buy insurances and those things, business services of big organization and for firms like CXC or People 2.0 that offer back office solutions and other core services that ultimately will tie back into I can do what I'm doing well, which is producing work. All the backup things, I can outsource those things. So I think from a BPO or outsourcing perspective, I think that people will continue to focus on what they do really well. I think that, from a money perspective, right? I think the numbers, supply chain financing will become important. I think that access to talent will become important. I think that putting more information out there, which is protected by a lot of different regulations, GDPR, all the different California laws we're coming out with from a city, state, federal perspective are going to impact those things. Because I think that a lot of times, especially with new regulation, they're trying to solve for bad actors. And so I think that one of the things that ultimately I'm excited about is things being more transparent, right? Having more automation to, like we talked about with our company or like companies. It's just really more access to information that is out there. And I think people spreading partnerships are going to become more important. go-to-market strategies, integrations with technologies, right?
Yeah.
We see there's people in the industry that try to be everything to everybody, and they're very successful, right? We know there's MSPs out there that do all the things. There's specialized MSPs, there's specialized staffing providers.
Yeah.
And I think that will go more the way of specialize, in my opinion, because the kind of black box scenario is not going to work for dynamic organizations.
No.
Another thing I think I'm going to see is that as people progress from like a Gen 1, Gen 2 to like Gen 3, 4, 5, think about that. I think that people are going to become more sophisticated in the way that they buy talent or engage talent, right? What are the differentiators between working at ABC company versus XYZ company? I think you have to differentiate yourself on opportunity, work-life balance, remote work, all those different things. And so what's coming up next is choice, right? You know, I look back over to like the cable industry where, you know, everyone cut the cord, but now they're spending more money having all the streaming services, right? Well, I think that we're kind of at that inflection point in our industry, which is like, yes, you can get talent from many different places, but is it tried, trusted? Is it more expensive? All those different things I think it will correct itself. And then people will come back to kind of the mean, which is there an opportunity for me? Do I want to apply for it? Am I matching that talent? Am I hiring that talent? Am I paying enough money? Rate intelligence will be huge. Work dynamic or, you know, diversity will be huge, right? Biases, those are the things that will continue to drive innovation. And I think we'll see a lot more companies pop up that will.
Wow, Derek, I love it. Absolutely love it. So, Derek, firstly, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Connor.
I've thoroughly enjoyed your thoughtfulness, your story, your energy, positivity, and thoughts on the future work. So, Derek, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it, and we appreciate you. Where can our audience reach out to talk to you, Derek, about Opply and all the amazing things that you guys could do for them?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Like I mentioned, we have some great announcements coming out here, so you'll be seeing our name a little bit more in the press. Definitely would love to connect over LinkedIn. Our website is opply.ai. There's a contact me or my team, so you can definitely reach out there. And for all those people in the industry, I'd love to talk to you at the upcoming CWS that will coming up here pretty shortly. But we're going to be at more conferences of those things. So one of my favorite things is like, you know, when you go to these big conferences, it's like a high school reunion, right? It's all the people that like you. I love catching up with you, grabbing a beer, catch up with old friends and see what's happened in the marketplace. So, you know, one of the things that if you're looking to learn more about our organization, our product, and our demo, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or our website, and I'm happy to connect with you and show you a demo.
Wonderful. Derek, wish you all the best. Look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, and continued success to you and your team. Take care, mate. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Open Talent Report with Connor Heaney. If you found this podcast informative and engaging, make sure you subscribe, tell your friends, and follow us on all your favorite streaming platforms.